So, the Suicide Squad is pretty freaking insane. It was the most fun I've had with not even a comic book movie, but with just a movie in general. It really felt like James Gunn on drugs, making a movie with absolute free reign from Warner Brothers, basically meaning he could do whatever the heck he wanted with the story and characters. Oh, that is basically what happened? Awesome! But the Suicide Squad really surprised me. I mean, obviously it was going to be better than the Ayer / studio meddled version.
So that's it? What, we some kind of Suicide Squad?
But the main things I want to touch on in this video essay is what exactly James Gunn did to make this so great, utterly unpredictable, and insane. But if you enjoyed today's video, please remember to leave a like and subscribe. And make sure to follow my Twitter @Machuw to stay updated with my content. Alright, let's get into it. Now, to get into why this movie works as well as it does, such as the emotional heart, the character dynamics, the music, and its ambition, I am going to talk a little bit about David Ayer's 2016 Suicide Squad and how it just did not work. The first thing is that it's tonally all over the place. Half of it is trying to be a dark, gritty war film, and the other half of it is just trying to be this fun, overly stylized film. There's a needle drop every other scene, there are jokes that just do not fit the tone at all, every character gets a backstory every time they're introduced, and it's just messy as heck. Second, the movie takes too long to get to its point. It legitimately takes an entire act to introduce the characters, the antagonists, and part of the plot. Third, it has very low ambition and stakes. For a movie called Suicide Squad starring only villains, we don't see a lot of people dying or doing anything all that villainous. Lastly, it doesn't have much of a heart. I feel like there's a little bit in there, maybe in the Ayer cut it would have been fleshed out better, but it's pretty absent. The only pathos we get with the characters is just in slideshow montages or exposition, so we don't really feel anything besides the scenes where they're just chilling in a bar together. And there is a reason I'm mentioning this, which I'll get to later, but I don't really like bringing up other movies just to say bad things about them. Anyway, the Suicide Squad manages to remedy all of these issues and more. The Suicide Squad starts with a live version of Folsom Prison Blues by Johnny Cash, which is a song about a fictional inmate who shot another man to death simply because he wanted to see him die, alongside his longingness to get out. So already the music functions with the story instead of just being there. And then the movie basically wastes zero time by briefly explaining the plot and introduces our main ensemble in a quick and fun way. In about 6 minutes, James Gunn already has our characters introduced in a helicopter about to start their mission. Our characters then start epically jumping out, about to start their mission, and then Weasel drowns. When I first saw Weasel, I was like, oh, he's gonna be like that fun, quirky animal character we all love in the film. And then no, he just died. This is a really cool way to both dramatically and comedically visualize to me that nobody in this movie is safe. Then Pete Davidson's character rats them out with 90% of them all dying in such brutal ways, hence the suicide mission. In just the first 12 minutes we are introduced to the tone, main concepts, characters, and a loose idea of the story. James Gunn masterfully wrote this opening sequence as it's able to tell us so much in such a short amount of time. And another thing he mastered is the unpredictability. Now, shock value is a really hard thing to do, because I think it's easy for people to fall into a trap of just doing shocking things just because it's an easy thing to get the attention of the audience, but obviously you want it to mean more than that, for it to affect the story in some way. The opening is not just shock value, it preps you for the rest of the movie because you really do feel like at any time these people could die. There were so many moments where I was on the edge of my seat not knowing who was gonna live or die. Sometimes I was right, sometimes I was wrong. For instance, in this scene I thought for sure King Shark was dead as he was just getting annihilated by these fish, and then he starts getting shot repeatedly by these soldiers. But nah, he's just chilling afterward, eating them. And I didn't think Polka Dot Man would die in this film, and then, well,
I'm a motherfucking super.
But sure, unpredictability and good shock value is nice, but what actually makes this movie great? A movie with this massive an ensemble with characters nobody has ever heard of nor cares about should not work. A movie where our main villain is a literal starfish that ends up getting consumed by rats should not work. A movie that's mixing really dark drama, violence, ridiculous characters, belly-laughing comedy, and more should not work well together at all. But I'm going to do my best here to analyze how Gunn meshes in all these concepts in a cohesive manner. The first thing is the characters. The characters in this film all have personalities and something to do, and I mean all of them. So obviously people like Harley, Bloodsport, Peacemaker, Rick Flag, and Ratcatcher 2 are all amazing because they're the main characters. But at the same time, who knows who Peacemaker, Bloodsport, or Ratcatcher 2 even are? Yeah, like, no one.
Who the fuck is Bloodsport?
This movie is just a prime example of giving you stuff that you never knew you wanted. After watching this movie, it came abundantly clear to me as to why Peacemaker was the only one to get a show. I don't think I've seen a character with this type of morality where he'll do anything to keep his version of peace. He's not crazy, erratic, or unhinged. He's actually frighteningly consistent with his values. The other standout is 100% with Polka Dot Man. I mean, the guy shoots and throws polka dots at people got a compelling story. Like, what? He's revealed as so much of a loser that people like Calendar Man make fun of him. The fact that this man is even in this movie is because James Gunn googled who's the dumbest superhero and he came up.
Well, for instance, Polka Dot Man, I just looked up online, dumbest supervillain ever. And there's a ton of clickbait lists all over the internet, and Polka Dot Man is at the top of all of them.
And I can still attest to this because I also just googled it and my man still pops up. But now we just gotta get Fruit Boy in the next one. Make it happen, James Gunn. And when I was watching this with my friend, we noticed that even the smaller characters and extras have personalities. For some examples, Waller's team actually has a conscience and doesn't do whatever she says like robots. This woman is randomly checking out Bloodsport and is just wildly inappropriate at work. Peacemaker actually likes dancing, having a good time, and even buys Sebastian a drink. And last, but definitely not least, Milton. I'm still not over this man's death, and if James Gunn is miraculously watching this, I will accept my therapy funds in the mail by check, please.
When did this great love affair with Milton start?
I liked him from the beginning, okay? I just didn't say anything.
But the main point I'm trying to get at here is that they're all extremely different and unknown. We shouldn't care about most of the people here in the slightest, but we get to know them and develop feelings for them, even when it comes to the most seemingly minute characters in the film. People like Polka Dot Man are meant to visually represent how much of these people are outcasts, like rats.
Why rats, Papa?
Rats are the lowliest and most despised of all creatures, my love. If they have purpose, so do we all.
And the second reason as to why this works as well as it does is the social commentary and drama. There really is something so innately tragic about bad guys who aren't even good at being bad. Like, how sad is that? These people never had a chance in the world, which happens a lot, which is actually what prison is supposed to help with, you know. Prison reform? Yeah, that doesn't exist here. People who get sent here are treated like dogs, like lab rats, something non-human. They never had a chance out there, and they surely don't have one here. And when they finally feel like they have something to offer, they're actually just being used as pawns by Amanda Waller so they can just die. And then you have the anomaly like Ratcatcher 2, who is clearly wrongfully imprisoned. She's just the sweetest and kindest member who genuinely cares about people, so it's a clear case that she doesn't deserve to be here.
As imperfect my father was, he loved me. I wish I could give that to you.
Man, she's so nice. Like, don't you just want to give this character a hug? Anyway, there's also some nice social commentary about America just assuming the worst in people and maybe just looking for any reason to arrest foreigners who come to live the American dream. Another thing I found quite interesting were the themes of anti-imperialism and people's perceptions of the world from the surface level. There are a lot of times here in the film where people just assume the worst in the situation, Peacemaker and Bloodsport being told to murder these people who are apparently very dangerous according to Waller, and then, well, turns out they're nice, peaceful people trying to free their country from complete government control.
Typical Americans. Just run in, guns blazing.
I know, this is messed up.
And at the end of the movie, we realize that our characters weren't sent here to save people and do good. They're actually sent here by Waller to cover up America's dirty tracks in this involvement. They don't care how many people die due to their own faults, but only that people don't see them as the culprit. It's pretty evil, but the movie's theme is that you can choose to be good, no matter what. Lastly, it is incredibly ironic that our glorified patriot character by the name of Peacemaker is the one that engages in the most violence. He's willing to kill anybody that gets in his way and to protect the government / the higher class even if it means screwing over the weak. His philosophy is that ignorance is bliss in terms of peace. He's the type of guy to suppress and control others in order to keep society calm and intact, which is definitely an allegory for the government's incessant need to control its citizens, such as violating privacy and basic human rights in order to keep the peace and protect us. Which is, again, ironic because Peacemaker is a glorified American patriot, yet he is in complete service of a hypocritical country and an organization that willfully disregards basic human rights.
Peacemaker. What a joke.
Now, as you can tell by this point, I love this movie, and yeah, it isn't perfect. For some examples, I think the scene where Harley gets captured and is just sort of kicking it with this dude goes on way too long for it to have very little payoff in the grander scheme of things. And most importantly, I didn't really think it ended on that much of an emotional note, unlike something like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. And the villain just lacked a little bit in terms of emotional depth. But I still think that's sort of okay. The thing about James Gunn's The Suicide Squad is that the tension is not built off of just Starro or the main villain, because really, who is the main villain? It's not really identifiable because Amanda Waller is probably the evilest one here, and the Suicide Squad constantly gets in their own way, making the tension build internally, and we also get Starro. It really makes you question who the villain really is in this scenario, and even though it lacks a bit in emotional stakes, James Gunn makes up for it by building stakes in different ways within the group dynamics, because every single one of these characters is unpredictable in what they'll do. In conclusion, the main component of what makes the Suicide Squad great is James Gunn. There are sadly very few movies where you can genuinely tell the director's personality after watching it. The Suicide Squad oozes personality with these fun little title cards, the wacky characters, the tonal mix of drama and comedy, and more. Meaning that if the studio has just learned to trust the creatives to do, well, the creative stuff, the products are generally better, as seen with Snyder, James Gunn, and hopefully David Ayer. And yeah, as I mentioned before, this movie is insane. But what makes it insane? Is it Starro getting attacked by a bunch of rats? Is it King Shark tearing people in half? No. Well, to me, the most insane part of this movie is the sheer fact that it even got made. To bring this full circle, David Ayer's 2016 Suicide Squad was botched by the studios and ended with a horrible product. Therefore, the studios didn't want to pursue the movie anymore. Then in late 2018, James Gunn got cancelled for some pretty awful tweets he made a decade prior, but then Warner Brothers was like, nah bro, we don't care about that, come work for us. So James Gunn was like, alright cool, and decided to basically make an R-rated version of Guardians at Warner Brothers. Then Disney eventually caved in and gave James Gunn Guardians of the Galaxy back. And not to mention that the Suicide Squad is a gigantic risk considering it's an R-rated movie that will definitely take away commercial value and stars a bunch of D-list characters no one's ever heard of. So quite frankly, this movie was a little bit of a miracle. I don't think it's a coincidence that James Gunn decided to do this movie in particular. It's pretty clear he's drawn to the more obscure characters, the ones that don't ordinarily get the spotlight, and the ones that feel like they don't have a purpose. He's mastered the ability to visualize how even the smallest of people and outcasts can and should be loved, and that even though there's a lot of evil in the world, humanity is good at its core. So yeah, honestly, this movie kind of feels like an allegory for what James Gunn went through when he was fired for the awful tweets he made in the past, because ultimately we've all made a lot of mistakes. Sometimes we make really big ones repeatedly, but does that mean we're just hopeless then? No, it just means we're human, and we're ultimately just trying to learn and grow as people. When James Gunn was seemingly thrown under the bus, his friends stuck by him publicly, another studio decided to give him a second chance anyway, and the studio that seemingly abandoned him decided to stop being corporate business for a second and just be an understanding and empathetic human. So if we learned anything here, it's to allow people to change, to learn, to realize there's potential in everybody, and just try to learn to trust each other once in a while instead of just assuming the worst in them. Or maybe the moral of the story here is to make a bunch of awful tweets and hope that in 10 years, it'll pay off. Huh. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to leave a like and subscribe. And what did you guys think of the Suicide Squad? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, I'd love to know down in the comments. And with all that being said, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace.